Hi everyone and welcome to this video. In this tutorial I'll show you a simple and effective way to create kick and bass from scratch. So the aim of this video is to teach you a simple yet solid and powerful bass line, because I think it's important to first understand the principles before moving on to some more complex bass lines. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. Alright, so as you can see, I'm working in Cubase. I think most of you guys are working in Ableton or Logic or something like that. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Cubase, that's absolutely not a problem. I will explain every step I take to make sure you guys can follow me easily. Now, what we're looking at right now is my custom Techno template, which I use for my Munkler projects. So let's look at it a little bit closer. In this section you can see several folders. Folders in Cubase are really just to organize all your instruments. These are not groups. It's just really to organize everything. Now, since we're working on kick and bass today, let's open up this folder. And as you can see, this is the content of the kick and bass folder. Here is another folder called kick and another one called bass. Let's start with the kick folder. As you can see, here is already a drum machine, which I called kick machine, and some MIDI notes. I will use this track later on to create our kick. Now our kick here is routed into my kick group. This is a subgroup. So, and below the kick folder, here is the bass folder. As you can see, here is already a new instance of Serum for our bass line with the initial preset. And this Serum is already routed into the bass subgroup. Now, the kick subgroup as well as the bass subgroup are already routed into my kick and bass group. So this kick and bass group contains everything we made up here. Exactly. And before we move on with the routing, there is a last thing in this kick and bass folder, which is called kick bass parallel effects. So this is a effects track. In Cubase it's called send effects. I think in Ableton it's return effects, but I'm not really sure about that because I'm not familiar with Ableton. So basically this is just for parallel processing of our kick and bass group here. Now let's bring up the mixer. So this is our kick and bass group, and as you can see in this routing section here, the kick and bass group is routed into the pre-master, which is this channel here. This isn't a must-have. You could also route your kick and bass group directly into the master, but I like to have a pre-master bus here. It's just to glue everything a little bit together. And from the pre-master channel, I go directly into the master channel, which is called stereo out in Cubase. Alright, so let's create our bassline preset. I'm just going to call this bass 1. And I want to write down some MIDI notes. Okay. So I like to start with a simple offbeat, even if I change this later on, because this way I don't need to take care of the ducking / sidechain compression. So I simply write down an offbeat, and as you can see, I leave a little bit of space at the end, because always remember you have a little bit of release. So this is what I do, what I recommend. Now let's bring up the Serum. So, as I told you before, you don't need the Serum to do this. You can do this in every subtractive synthesizer, even if it's a hardware synthesizer. We just need one oscillator with a sawtooth waveform. We need one filter, and we need two envelopes, one for the amplitude and one for the filter. All right. So let's start with the oscillator A here. First thing that I always do in Serum is to take down this random phase button, this random phase control. I can demonstrate you what happens if you don't take this down. This is an oscilloscope on the master bus. Let's check what happens if we don't change the random phase control. As you can see, it's totally unstable, and that is something that we need to avoid. So let's take this random phase all the way down to 0 and check the oscilloscope again. As you can see, now it's totally stable, and that's perfect. That's exactly what we want. Now, as I said before, I want to keep it simple, so we stick with the sawtooth waveform here, and we won't change anything else in this oscillator. Alright, now let's move on with the filter. This is the filter 1. We just need one filter, and as you can see, the A here is blue, which means oscillator A is controlled by filter 1. You could also check it up here. This control is set to 1, which means filter 1. Alright, now we don't need to do something in here right now, so we can move on to the envelope section. The envelope 1 is already routed to the amplitude, which is fine, and now we need the envelope 2 to control our cutoff. And that's pretty simple in Serum. Just grab this little cross here and drop it on the cutoff, and now it's modulated. You could also check it up here in the matrix. Envelope 2 modulates filter 1 frequency. So let's take this a little bit down, and this little thing up here is the modulation of the selected module. For example, if I select this one, you see it's nothing blue here because this is not modulated with the cutoff. So this, if I select this, you can see this is blue, and you can grab it and move it. Now this blue section here is the range of the modulation. All right, so let's make something like this and start playing around with the filter modulation here. I want a short attack because I want a crispy transient of the bass line. So a relatively short attack is fine. I don't touch the hold. And now I'm going to play with the decay, sustain, and release. Another interesting thing in Serum is this drive here. It basically just makes it louder, but in an interesting way. All right. Maybe let's listen to this with a kick. This is just a random kick. It isn't the final kick, but it helps us to create the bass preset. It's obviously getting louder, but I like, in this case, I really like it. It's just fuller and richer, so I will stick with this. So actually, I'm pretty happy with our kick and bass now. Just let me add some drums, maybe some lead instruments, so we can listen to this kick and bass in context of a real track.